Wonderful. Well, we're really looking forward to kicking off the discussion this morning, and I think that uncertainty is certainly the theme of the day. I actually come from Washington, D.C., where we know a little bit about uncertainty, but I think we're seeing a fair amount of that also around the globe and in cyberspace. So we're going to dive in today to look at exactly what we should be focused on in 2025, and I'll even extend that to a little bit beyond, but I think the idea is to look at sort of the proximate issues before us. Today we have a fantastic panel. I'll just sort of quickly go down the line and then we'll dive into to questions. We'll also try to save a little bit of time at the end for audience questions as well. But with us today we have Sami Khoury, who is the senior official for cybersecurity for the Government of Canada. He is responsible for advising officials across the government on safeguarding Canada's digital infrastructure. Prior to this, he was the head of the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, which is the primary source of support on cybersecurity for government critical infrastructure owners and operators and the private sector, as well as the Canadian public. So no big responsibility there. We also have Felix, yes, sorry, we changed the order a little bit. Felix Barrio, who is Director General of IBE in Spain, which is the Spanish National Cybersecurity Institute. He's previously been a member of the Board of Directors of the European Cybersecurity Organization and Chairman of the UNE Subcommittee on Cybersecurity Technologies. We also have Annegret Bendig, who is with SWP Germany, where she is the principal investigator for the European Repository of Cyber Incidents. And SWP is the German Institute for International and Security Affairs. There, she focuses on analyzing cyber trends, particularly as it relates to the EU and NATO, but the world as well. And then we have Marko Mikkelsen, who is a member of Parliament and chairman of Foreign Affairs Committee for the Estonian Parliament. He has served in previous parliaments as chair of the EU Affairs Committee, the National Defense Committee, and has also served roles as director of the Baltic Center for Russian Studies and the editor-in-chief of Postimees, the biggest national daily newspaper in Estonia. And then finally, we have Keiichi Ichikawa, who is the Assistant Chief Cabinet Secretary and Deputy National Security Advisor in the Cabinet Secretariat in Japan. Previously, he served at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for Japan for 30 years, and he's worked primarily on foreign policy coordination. Now he's focused on cybersecurity, AI, and national security. So with that, I'd like to dive in, and maybe we'll start with Marko. We'd like to think a little bit about, I think, the geopolitical side of this first. As you're sort of looking ahead this year, what do you see as the ways in which geopolitical dynamics are most likely to affect and drive cyber threats, especially for democracies? I also know you just came back from Ukraine, so feel free to share any thoughts from the trip as well.
Thank you very much indeed, and very, very happy to be here. It's a crucial moment, I think, specifically when we think what happened yesterday. So, and surprisingly so, again, before we all cover here in Munich. In 2007, then Munich conference was on, and Russian dictator Putin gave a speech here. Not many people understood, but actually he declared war on us, on the Western countries. It was perhaps that time shocking for many, but not that much for us who are in very close vicinity to Russia. I think that Japan also understands pretty much what I'm talking here about. But anyway, it's what is crucial today to understand that perhaps more vividly we see today that war is not going on only conventionally in the middle of Europe in Ukraine. I spent last week 4 days on front lines, not only in Kiev, but I met a number of commanders who are fighting for us right now there. And the battle is very, very difficult. Actually, the losses of the Ukrainian forces are high and they are exhausted. They would like to see some change. They would like to see happy ending for this war, but not by any cost. And this is important to understand today that when we start these very important days here in Munich as well, and when we talk generally about geopolitical situation, that we are entering in a very dangerous ground. And hopefully what was launched yesterday will not lead to new Munich 2.0. I mean, when it comes down to what happened in 1938. But many yesterday thought that we are getting closer to that if we will make wrong turns. And telling this, I think that we have to recognize that we are in undeclared war for years already. That includes also cybersecurity as a very important and very cost-effective tool for Russia. And not only for Russia, as we see today, there are a number of countries, autocracies, who have joined their forces to redefine the world order, particularly North Korea, China, Iran. And they are very, very much active also in a cyberspace, doing things or planning things jointly, not only separately. And what we see today is what is important to also recognize that then in 2015, countries, members of United Nations, agreed upon of norms to behave responsibly in a cyberspace. We understand that obviously those norms are not something what Russia or some other countries can follow easily. What we have seen throughout these years since 2015, numerous very successful actually attempts, and not only attempts to disrupt our resilience and our readiness to fight and win in this undeclared war. And I think then we go and check what are the most important, let's say, challenges for this year, particularly also in the sphere of cyberspace. We have to understand that we cannot distinguish what is happening in a cybersphere to what is going on generally in geopolitical landscape today. And there is a very important to, obviously, for countries who defend norm-based or rule-based world order to work together more closely today, how to not only defend, but if needed, also offend those challenges what we have today. And last but not least, we had in Estonia a very interesting exercise just a few days ago, a very successful one. It was a historic moment last week, and then Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania disconnected from Russian electrical grid and synchronized it with European one. Obviously, we prepared for that for more than 3 years, including also to make sure that our critical infrastructure at that time is not going to be attacked by those who would like to disrupt us. And we were actually very successful. And another very interesting example how we have been resilient to any kinds of surprises in digital infrastructure in Estonia is that this year we marked 20th anniversary of e-voting possible in Estonia. Estonia is still the only country in the world where people can vote through internet. And this autumn we will have local elections again. And every time we get to that point, our authorities who will defend us in cyberspace get more resilient again. So it's this is something what is as a small example from our side. But last but not least, again, when we talk about the new challenges, we have to keep in mind that we are right now challenged in different domains at the same time, and the main aim of Russia, together supported by China and North Korea and Iran, is to destroy basically our security architecture here in Europe, to Finlandize Europe, if I may say so, as Putin said directly to Biden. That means that overrule our sovereign security decisions, perhaps even destroy NATO. And do we want to live in this world? not of course. So we have to be resilient in every case to fight back. And first and foremost, easiest way to do so is to help Ukraine to win in this war today, even with knowing that this is going to be a very difficult task.
Wonderful, thank you. So you also mentioned China, and Kichi, I wonder if you can talk a little bit about some of the risks that we've seen, particularly from China, but also other nation-state threats. We've seen the typhoon campaigns, we've seen other things like that, but I wonder, as you're sort of looking at what we should expect this year, what are you expecting from China and other state-based threats, and what can we do about it?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, I'm very happy to be here for the first time to discuss together with this kind of distinguished panelists, and also in front of the distinguished other guests. Talking about the cybersecurity, I think we need to looking at the cybersecurity in a broader context, that is geostrategic. We are now in the age of geopolitical competition. And cybersecurity is one of the important parts of such large context of geostrategic competition. So in a sense, it's really important how to make our cyber capability to defend our values and norms and international order, which have long sustained together jointly. And talking about the actors, which makes us worried quite recently, well, short answer is really clear. The actors which are linked to China, North Korea, and Russia are the main actors which have increasingly sophisticated and advanced capability, which are posing the challenge against our national interest and international order. So in that sense, like-minded countries like us need to have a sense of urgency to reinforce our government's capability, cyber capability, collaboration with private sectors, as well as international cooperation with like-minded countries. That's really important. And you mentioned about the so-called typhoons, the cyber activities. Yes, this new type of cyber attacks are really concerning. For example, Bo typhoon, it is said that it's quietly stays inside the critical infrastructure and prepares to jeopardize national security as well as disrupt critical infrastructure when time is come. And talking about the Seoul typhoon, it is said that it infiltrates into and stay in telecommunication networks very quietly without being detected and engage in espionage. It's a new type of espionage. It's really scary. And those kind of activities have a very unique characteristics, I believe, that is more geostrategic, more strategic, and mid and long-term based, and very covert. And this is very different from very traditional Russian cyber attack, which tends to be surgical, very short-term based, and ostentatious. And but those typhoons activities use so-called living of the land techniques, so that it is getting harder and harder for us to detect. So in that sense, those new activities in cyber domain have posed very difficult challenges for us. So we need to collaborate with each other to be more proactive to counter this kind of challenges. For example, we need to strengthen engaging in threat hunting based on the shared intelligence, as well as collaboration with private sectors and like-minded countries. And let me touch upon another entity that is North Korea, especially their very covert activities in cyber domain. They have long engaged, recent years, they have engaged in malicious cyber activities to obtain illegal money, including through cryptocurrency theft, as well as IT workers. And according to a chain analysis reports, North Korea stolen cryptocurrency, which amount to $1.3 billion only last year, which hit a record ever in history. And it is said that those funds is being used for their development of nukes and ballistic missiles, including ICBMs, which have a capacity capability to reach the east coast of the United States. So these kind of North Korean cyber activities is posing the direct geostrategic challenge for us. That's really serious. So maybe I don't need to mention about Russia because my colleague also already mentioned a lot about it. I think we have faced with so increased challenge in front of us. And against the backdrop of these trends, let me share with you a little bit about the regional cooperation and collaboration in the Indo-Pacific, especially trilateral mechanism with US, Japan, South Korea. And another one is so-called Quad, which is composed of US, Japan, Australia, and India. Using both those mechanisms, we have been working on cyber security to be strengthened jointly. Under the trilateral framework, we are discussing how to reinforce our capability, especially inviting people with different backgrounds, such as intelligence, law enforcement, and people with diplomacy. And most of the recent achievement we made is joint statement issued last month on malicious cryptocurrency theft activities in North Korea. By doing so, we try to raise awareness of the people in and around this region. And with regard to quadrilateral cooperation, we have discussed a bunch of aspects of the cybersecurity, which includes the undersea cable or the digital infrastructure to be resilient and robust, as well as the supply chain resilience. So by doing such kind of regional effort, we would like to strengthen our cybersecurity capabilities. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks. And I think we'll keep the conversation moving. We'll try to keep the answers fairly short so that we can get to the audience questions as well. But I think both Kichi and Marco raised important points around kind of going across domains, right? Cyber doesn't just exist, with computers and computers and across boundaries, so to speak, but rather in a state of conflict. And so, Sammy, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the role that you see cyber playing, increasingly over time when it comes to conflict. And it could be military conflict, or it could just be other geopolitical conflict. Let's pick a random example like terrorists, right? We could start seeing cyber being interjected into the larger sort of conflict going on among countries as there are tensions that folks are trying to gain leverage on.
Sure. I'll give you probably a Canadian perspective on how we see this happening. But more and more, cyber is being integrated into, a whole of government approach to international relation, diplomacy, a military campaign. We see Russia integrating cyber into its military campaign in Ukraine. We see China integrating cyber into its pre-positioning on the various typhoons. We're also very concerned in a Canadian sense about the rise of hacktivist and hacktivism, which is taking a geopolitical stint to its activity. It's one thing, to hold a sign, a protest in front of a conference. It's another thing when they develop cyber capabilities and start using those cyber capabilities. We've seen a number of campaigns in Canada. Russian hacktivists going against Canadian government entity, against private sector entity. Every time President Zelensky visited Canada, we would see a wave of DDoS attacks. More recently, we still have a spat with India, and we've seen Indian hacktivists decide to DDoS and other techniques against Canadian entity, not just government. So that adds a level of uncertainty and unpredictability to the cyber landscape that we live in. It's no longer government on government. It's government on, for us, provincial entities, on private sector. And we have to be expansive in our domain. So I'm not, as the previous head of the Cyber Center, I wasn't just limited to protecting government network. I was also in charge of protecting the entire nation from cybersecurity and making sure that we build the resilience that we see. And lastly, another element that we see where cyber is being injected is a threat to democratic processes and election interference and election meddling, where cyber is becoming a tool often enhanced by things like AI and others, to influence how people vote, influence how people perceive candidates in election. And that is a foreign interference that other countries are putting cyber in their toolbox to go after, the Western democracy or the values that we cherish.
No, wonderful points. And as we think about sort of the tools in the toolbox, Annegret, I know that you're following a lot of these trends, and some of the tactics that we've seen, sort of at least in 2004, involved, data ransomware kind of shifting to data extortion, although obviously we see a fair amount of both. We've seen attacks on cloud systems and things like that. Wondering sort of what you've seen that suggests kind of the trajectory into 2025. What can we expect to be faced with from the threat actors?
Thank you so much, first of all, for the invitation. I would like to highlight three drivers, I think, which are relevant for European security. And I totally agree that to our Estonian panelists here, that the perspective is right, that the world in Europe will change immediately and probably up to Monday onwards, because we will see another security situation here in Europe, and that will, of course, affect also the cybersecurity landscape. So the first driver is important for the European security, and that is the Russian efforts to erode support for Ukraine. And I think in this sense, the Russians were, in a way, successful so far. Driver two is the Chinese preparations for a geopolitical contingency. Also, this will affect, of course, us in our European stance. And driver three is that cybercrime is and will be an emerging security threat. And here, of course, not only criminals, but also hacktivists come into play. I also would like to highlight three findings, general findings, because I think the European threat landscape is a little bit different than the global threat landscape. And that is important, of course, also for the functioning of the internal market. We see that operations against targets in the EU increased if you compare it with the global scale. That is interesting. And ransomware are here still leading on intensity. And we also analyzed that this zero trust policy and zero tolerance is worth to follow, because it is important to decrease the intensity of ransomware campaigns. And among critical infrastructure, and we see that the health sector, that is not new for you, I think, experienced ransomware and data theft attacks. And therefore, the initiative taken by the European Commission and also under the Polish presidency now is important that we go and fight for our critical infrastructure, especially in this sensitive area. Second findings, state-sponsored intrusions tied to China nexus groups. So you already told and mentioned Volt, Salt, and Flex typhoons. These attacks are not only important for the US, because they happened in the US, first of all, but they are also important for us Europeans, because they can easily be directed against EU targets. And that is also true for Canada and other countries. So, so far, publicly reported activity predominantly pointed to criminal motivated data theft as a leading threat for the telecom sector here in Europe, but this can be, and this will be changed. And thirdly, and finally, since 2002, Russia-linked actors prioritized disruptive operations. And that is important to mention because this 29155 unit within the military intelligence service grew, expanded its scope, standing up to a cyber and offensive cyber operation team. And that is not all. They also include more and more criminal actors in their campaigns. So we have an expanded activity also here coming out of this region. And therefore, and that was the reason why the Five Eyes and 6 member states of the European Union and Estonia confirmed this shift in operation. And that is important. So it makes sense to have a more detailed look at the trends. And finally, China nexus actors maintained a focus on espionage. And that is interesting because these state-affiliated groups seek to rely on operations through botnets and infiltrate targets in organizations through vulnerabilities in edge devices that offer limited maintaining and monitoring capacities. And also this, I think, these are the trends we observed in 24, but they will be also relevant in 25, and also when the US government will change their stance for European security. Thank you.
Let me pull on that thread a little bit, though. When you say the US will change its stance on European security, what do you see as the implications of that? And maybe if you can do the follow-up, but Felix, if you can speak to that as well.
You mean?
Yeah, yeah.
I think that on a political level, European security in general is dependent on the Five Eyes. So we have not so far an intelligence community built up on a European level. And what is also lacking on the European level is the situational awareness, so the 360-degree threat landscape perspective. And for this, we are dependent on the Five Eyes and other countries that they deliver, also Japan and G7 countries, to deliver and exchange information about the threat landscape. And the interesting thing is we should observe is in how far the US government also will change this way of cooperating with European governments in the future, or in the next weeks and months to go. So, and this is crucial, of course, also for cybersecurity. You could argue, okay, they are also interested in the European market because they would like to sell their hard and software to the Europeans, but that can also be changed.
So Felix, picking up on that, I'd love your thoughts on sort of the implications perhaps of a changing relationship with the US, but also talking a little bit about what other challenges do you see to international cooperation on cyber at this point, and what can we do about it?
Well, without taking into consideration geostrategic questions well explained by the previous intervenants, let me point out a couple of challenges that we are facing in terms of global cooperation from the point of view of our own experience in the Spanish governmental agency of cybersecurity. 10 years ago, we founded with the Organization of American States an annual event during 2 weeks. Every July, we gather 400 representatives of the 30 countries of the Organization of American States, developing 20 different courses, mainly focused on CERT training, militaries, police agents, but also judiciary, civil diplomacy, all the representatives that make possible this level of confidence when it's necessary to share information related to global incidents. And we realized that the best performance of our information sharing initiatives are where you have not only colleagues, you have comrades that have passed time, spent time with you in this kind of events. A very low investment, fairly 1 million euros per year, allow us to establish a network of cooperation very effective. But it depends to be a broad, open mind, because you have to incorporate public and private representatives from public and private sectors. You have to incorporate representatives of private sector, because we should remember that the current global cooperation remains on private sector. Supply chain is the main challenge that we have to involve in this cooperation liaisons, that it runs very effectively at the level, at the layer of public organizations, but we remain our confidence in the supply chain. Health sector, transport and logistics, all these new sectors that need to directives is incorporated in terms of compliance, relies to have local providers. And local providers have their own global relationships, establishing partnerships with Asian companies, American companies, that have incorporated their devices in our local markets. And they don't understand of barriers, frontiers, something like regulations, stoppers, to ban some kind of providers, because we have incorporated them in our value chain. And a case that is very well known is the automotive industry, where now we are working hand by hand without not various consideration from the perspective of the private company. So it's very important to keep the effort to establish strong liaisons with all providers in all the regional areas, and it's very important, the second challenge, that is establish this kind of big, high confidence in our cooperation. And this is what we have learned with our experience. Beyond the regulations, we should avoid the mistake to incorporate private strategies at the international level with public relationships.
Wonderful, thank you. I want to go to audience questions, but just wanted to touch on 2 more points, just as we're thinking about, what we're facing the year ahead. The first being countering disinformation, and Sammy, you referenced sort of election security. I'd be curious, just quickly, what you think are the biggest kind of disinformation-related threats that you are worried about on the horizon.
Well, in Canada, we're probably about to go into a general election, so that, to us, that's a big concern. We just wrapped up, or the government just wrapped up, a public inquiry on foreign interference, and it has concluded that there was some foreign interference. So we are concerned about making sure that we can sort of constrain that effort. From a technology point of view, we're still a paper-based ballot system, so people vote with a pencil and a piece of paper. So hacking into that system might be difficult, but nevertheless, we need to continue to protect the back-end infrastructure of election. But also, we're very concerned about things like robocalls, how AI is being repurposed for voice of candidates. And we've had cases where people received robocalls with the voice of a candidate, but the message was completely false. So how do we educate Canadian citizens to the fact that this threat is real, to be on guard, and to report issues? We make it sure we are not here to validate every call that people get. We don't want to be the arbiter of messages, but it's important that people are educated that the threat is real and they need to do something about it. Video is probably a little bit less concerning today, but it's going to come, the day will come when video deepfake will start to surface on media and will be concerned. But for now, I would say it's the messaging and it's definitely the voice element of it.
Yeah, just 2 points. I think the easiest way how to fight against disinformation and those campaigns which are mainly organized by Russia within our societies, we have to defeat Russia in real battle. This is why it is so important right now in Ukraine to defeat this aggressor. If we are going to make peace with aggressor, we will see this year, next years, and coming years much more robust attacks against us, both against our infrastructure, but also against our resilience through interfering into elections. And I think the problem has been that we have not been able to recognize openly that Russia is doing this. Think about 2016. How much have you heard about what Russians did during Brexit campaign? How they hacked into the computers and actually influenced British radio editors to change their course and narratives. Intelligence services know about that perfectly well. The same what happened during US elections in 2016 and later on. So what you mentioned about attribution, this is extremely important today, not to be only on defensive lines, but also to show them that we can disrupt you as well. That was done in 1980s, if you go back and think about that pipeline issue, or what happened in 2021 when Russians attacked Rotterdam port, and then, I'm not going into details, but one Russian military airfield was attacked in cyberspace. So they have to understand that there are consequences what they do. But first and foremost, we get rid of that threat if we defeat Russia in this war. Thank you.
Thank you. And just sort of thinking ahead on AI, and I recall at last year's conference when AI came up, people kind of said, oh yeah, it should be a factor. It's not really clear how. I think that we're starting to get a little bit more of a sense of how AI is going to be playing into cybersecurity, both on when it comes to offense and when it comes to defense. And so, Kichi, I was wondering if you could just sort of let us know, is it AI friend or foe for cybersecurity?
Well, thank you very much. And although I'm not the expert of AI, but of course, I have been paying a lot of attention about the development of AI and implication in the context of cybersecurity. So let me try. And of course, there are a couple of concerns or risks raised by AI. In the context of cybersecurity, for example, AI will create the phishing mail and deepfake to look more real. So by using social engineering, the malicious actors can collect the password or the other authentication key, etc., etc. And also, AI will help find vulnerabilities and more related information with targeted the systems. And also, AI will help create the advanced malwares that are very scary. And I think it's a matter of time when AI-enabled cyber attack will take place and cause a lot of damage in our society. And on the other hand, there is a bright side, of course, and it would be useful to use AI to counter to AI-enabled cyber attacks. Especially when it comes to threat hunting. Probably with help of AI, we can carry out more effective threat hunting on the assumption which human being cannot come up with, but AI can do, for example. And also, the AI will help, will suggest to us the recommended action when we need to respond to the cyber incidents. But up until now, I think compared to the speed of spread and the evolution of AI, our efforts, unfortunately, are way behind. So that is a problem. So we need to do more in this area. And In addition, there is a caveat in case of AI to be used for cybersecurity. This is because of the issue of data poisoning and hallucination and so-called jailbreak. It's really dangerous for us to completely rely on the AI. So people say that it is really important to establish the concept of human in the loop. Well, it sounds very reasonable, but I think here again there is a pitfall. We need to careful about because looking back our history, human beings make some mistakes. Bad guy did bad things. So what about if someone in a key position there in the loop? So in that sense, I think that human beings need to be work together with AI based on the shared value and establish norms. So that's really important. So again, about cybersecurity is closely connected with our shared value and norms. How to spread out this kind of important notion to as many countries as possible, to many people as possible. And that is a key issue. That's all. Thank you.
So I think we have time for maybe one quick audience question. Anyone have a burning one? Sure.
Hello, my name is Igor Ausho. I'm CEO of Cybersecurity from Ukraine. So basically what we see in Ukraine is Ukraine now is the most attacked country in the world. And we see like at least 2 times more attacks, cyber attacks on Ukraine in 2024 in comparison with 2023. And hackers, like Russian hackers and other countries, they become more organized, they prepare it, they use AI, deep fakes, and all these new technologies. So my question is like for all panelists probably who would like to answer, so are we prepared enough for this at least double number, like 2 times more cyber attack for Western world, let's say? Are we going to have 2 times more trainings and 2 times more activities against these hackers? Do we have at least in plan 2 times more activities? So my questions. And is Ukraine your considering as a reliable partner for these activities, like for anti-hackers? Thank you.
Marco, do you want to start with that, and anyone else can jump in as well?
Yeah, this is an excellent point. Actually, Estonia, Ukraine working very closely together, helping you and what you witnessed in last autumn. The major attack against your Justice Ministry register system was very massive. But again, we see also in Estonia, a small nation as we are, during last 2 or 3 years. The attacks are doubled, if not more. And last year we had at least 6,000 plus attacks, which had some course or kind of consequences. So it demands quite a lot of investments into both infrastructure, but also a very good cooperation between public and private sector. As I explained earlier about what we did to defend our electricity grid at the time of this major change of desynchronization. But again, I think we have a lot to learn from you, Ukrainians, in many ways, in how to in real-time warfare situation to defend.
Great. And Felix, why don't you wrap it up with us?
I agree with Marco. During 3 years of a strong cooperation with cybersecurity authorities in Ukraine, our agency has learned that Ukraine at this moment has the most competitive cyber command in terms of cyber defense, and maybe the best army of Europe in terms of experience and skills, etc. And the main necessity at this moment is to rebuild the local market. If we are not able to start to build a new workforce on cybersecurity inside private sector, industries, Ukrainian companies, if we don't invest directly to establish partnerships for local providers in cybersecurity, the work will be lost. And this is our main priority. And this is a good example of which kind of global cooperation we have to work to develop the lower maturity markets, like, for example, we have because the war in Ukraine.
Wonderful. Well, a great point to end on. Thank you so much to this panel. Really appreciate it. And thanks to the audience for your participation.